I didn't realize how disposable I was to my family until my father said it without even looking at me. "We already put the $25,000 deposit down, Jordan. We can't help you." He said it casually, like he was talking about canceling a dinner reservation. His eyes never left the model yacht in his hands. He was polishing it with a microfiber cloth, slow and careful, like it mattered more than anything else in the room. I stood there, barely upright, my right ankle wrapped in thick white gauze already turning red. Blood was seeping through the bandage. Every pulse of my heart sent a sharp, electric pain shooting up my leg. In my hand was the hospital bill. $4,500. That number decided whether I would walk normally for the rest of my life, or limp forever. "Dad," I said quietly. My voice cracked even though I didn't want it to. "It's my leg." The doctor's words were still ringing in my ears. "Surgery this week or permanent damage." My father blew a speck of dust off the tiny yacht deck. "The money's tied up," he said. "Non-refundable." I swallowed. "It's surgery," I whispered. "Not a vacation." My mother didn't even look at me. She turned the page of her magazine, the paper making a soft, careless sound. "You're an adult now, honey," she said, bored. "You chose to drive that old car. Maybe limping for a few months will teach you to be more careful next time." Careful. Like I chose to get hit. From the corner of the room, my sister Ashley laughed. Not nervous. Not awkward. Amused. "Why don't you just sell your laptop?" she said, scrolling her phone. "That little freelance hobby of yours clearly isn't paying the bills if you're here begging." Begging. That word hit harder than the pain in my ankle. I looked around the room. The polished hardwood floors. The art on the walls. The expensive vanilla candles burning like nothing was wrong. And right there on the table, the toy yacht, worth 5 times more than my ability to walk. That's when something inside me went quiet. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't beg again. I just nodded. I gripped the armrest of the leather sofa, biting down as pain exploded up my leg, and pushed myself to my feet. My ankle screamed. My vision blurred. No one moved to help me. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was cold. It was the silence of people who watched someone bleed and decided the carpet mattered more. I limped to the door, every step slow and humiliating. No one stopped me. I opened the heavy oak door, stepped out into the night, and pulled it shut behind me. And in that moment, the daughter who wanted their approval died. My name is Jordan. I'm 28 years old. People love to say family comes first. That night, I learned the truth. In my family, image came first. Money came first. Ego came first. And I came last. I didn't walk away knowing how I'd survive. But I walked away knowing one thing for sure. If they could choose a boat over my leg, then one day, I'd make them choose between their pride and everything they owned. And next time, I wouldn't be the one begging. I didn't go anywhere dramatic after I left. No rain. No breakdown in the street. I went home. If you could call a 400-square-foot studio with peeling paint and a rattling heater home. I collapsed onto the floor because the couch hurt too much. My back pressed against cold drywall. I stared at my ankle, swollen and purple, the bandage soaked through again. The pain was loud, but the anger? The anger was quiet. It didn't burn. It calculated. That's the kind that changes lives. To understand why I didn't turn back and beg them, why I didn't scream, you need to understand how my family worked. In my house, love wasn't free. It was a transaction. And I was always overdrawn. 2 years earlier, Ashley had opened a luxury organic wellness spa. That's what she called it. What it really was an Instagram backdrop. She spent the startup money on trips to Tulum, designer furniture, and a launch party that cost more than my yearly rent. 6 months later, the spa was bleeding cash. So my father wrote her a check. $50,000. No contract. No interest. No lectures. "I'm protecting her credit score," he'd said proudly. Ashley cried, hugged him, called him her hero. Now rewind to me at 22. I borrowed $2,000 to fix my car so I could get to my first real job. They made me sign a notarized contract. 5% interest. Monthly payments. I ate instant noodles for months. Walked 3 miles to save gas. Paid it off early because I thought, if I show them I'm responsible, they'll respect me. I was an idiot. Sitting on my floor, staring at my ankle, it finally clicked. It was never about money. They had money. They had just chosen a fiberglass boat over their daughter's ability to walk. To them, I wasn't family. I was a bad investment. A write-off. I was still staring at the wall when there was a knock at my door. Soft. Hesitant. My heart jumped. If it was my landlord, I was finished. Jordan, it's me. Caleb. My brother. I dragged myself up and unlocked the door. He stood there in grease-stained mechanic coveralls, eyes red, smelling like motor oil and burnt coffee. He looked exhausted in a way rich people never understand. His gaze dropped to my ankle. Jesus, he muttered. Without saying another word, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a wad of cash. Mostly 10s and 20s. Dirty. Crumpled. It's 500, he said quietly. I sold my tool set to the new guy at the shop. I stared at the money. My parents had millions in assets. They wouldn't give me 4,000. My brother, who worked 60 hours a week on his feet, sold his livelihood to give me everything he had. I can't take this, I whispered. Take it, he said, pushing it into my hand. Please. I can't watch you lose your leg because they're monsters. That's when I broke. Not sobbing. Just something inside me split open. I took the money, not because it would save me, but because I needed to remember this moment. Who showed up and who didn't. After Caleb left, I didn't sleep. I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg anymore. The next morning, I went to a lender I should have avoided. The kind of place that smiles while sharpening the knife. The interest rate was criminal. I signed anyway. I paid for the surgery. I chose to walk again. And as they wheeled me into the operating room, staring up at fluorescent lights, one thought anchored itself in my chest. They chose a boat over me. Fine. One day, they'll pay for every single step. I woke up from surgery with my leg wrapped in a cast and my bank account essentially dead. Physically, I was healing. Financially, I was hemorrhaging. The pain meds dulled the ache in my ankle, but nothing dulled the panic. Every morning, I stared at the ceiling of my studio apartment, listening to the heater knock like it might give up at any moment, and did the math again. And again. And again. The loan payment was due in 3 days. 3. I had $42 in my checking account. Not 400. Not even 100. 42. I sat on my thrift store couch, my leg propped up on a stack of old magazines, a bowl of lukewarm ramen balanced on my stomach. The noodles tasted like cardboard. I wasn't really eating, I was calculating. Could I sell my laptop? No, that killed my income. Sell my furniture? Already secondhand. Donate plasma? Maybe if the painkillers didn't disqualify me. That's when my hand brushed against something in my jeans pocket. Paper. I frowned and pulled it out. A crumpled lottery ticket. I laughed. A short, ugly sound. I remembered buying it at the gas station while picking up my prescriptions. $2 of desperation. A joke I told myself so I wouldn't cry in public. I almost threw it away. Almost. Instead, I smoothed it out on the coffee table and opened the lottery app on my phone. My numbers stared back at me. Powerball, 7. I checked once. Then again. Then a third time, slower. My heartbeat suddenly loud in my ears. The app refreshed. Jackpot. $12 million. I didn't scream. I didn't jump. I didn't call anyone. I just sat there in the absolute silence of my apartment, listening to the refrigerator hum, my hands shaking so badly I had to set the phone down. In movies, people celebrate. In real life, when you hand a starving person a feast, they don't cheer. They get suspicious. My first thought wasn't joy. It was fear. If my parents find out, they'd suddenly remember how much they loved me. My mother would cry. My father would call it family money. Ashley would need an investor, a partner, a bailout. So I did the smartest thing I've ever done in my life. I didn't cash the ticket. I hired a lawyer. Not a strip mall lawyer. A corporate one. Glass tower. Marble floors. $800 an hour. I walked into his office on crutches, wearing a hoodie and borrowed confidence, and placed the ticket on his desk. I want two things, I said. First, I want this money placed in a blind trust. No name, no trace. He nodded slowly. And second, I want a full forensic financial investigation into Dennis and Pamela Miller. 3 days later, I was back in his office. He slid a thick folder across the desk. Your parents, he said carefully, are not wealthy. I opened the file and watched their myth collapse. The mansion? Mortgaged to the limit. 3 months behind on payments. Foreclosure notices hidden. The boat deposit? Charged to a credit card with 22% interest. Ashley's spa? A disaster. Bleeding cash. Payroll covered by illegally siphoning equity from the house. They weren't rich. They were drowning. They had refused me $4,000 to save my leg while bleeding $500,000 to protect their image. I closed the folder. They didn't just abandon me, I said quietly. They bet against me. My lawyer leaned back. What do you want to do? Protect your assets? He asked. Distance yourself? I shook my head. No, I said. I don't want to run from their debt. I met his eyes. I want to own it. And that's when the game truly began. Power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it signs paperwork quietly. I instructed my lawyer to form a shell company. Clean. Anonymous. Boring on the surface. We called it Chimera Holdings. The name felt right. A creature made of different parts. Something that looked harmless until it moved. With my capital secured and my identity buried, I approached the banks holding my parents' debt. Banks don't hate people. They hate risk. Distressed mortgages. Delinquent business loans. Bad debt sitting on their books like rot. They didn't argue when Chimera offered cash. They were relieved. I bought the mortgage on my parents' mansion. I bought the loans tied to Ashley's spa. Pennies on the dollar. Within 48 hours, I owned everything they pretended to control. They just didn't know it yet. On paper, they weren't answering to me. They were answering to a faceless corporation. And that made all the difference. I didn't rush them. I didn't threaten. I waited. Because the trap wasn't a cage. It was a mirror. I knew my parents. If a creditor came at them aggressively, they'd play the victims. Cry to friends. Start fundraisers. Rewrite the story. But if someone came offering validation, they'd step forward willingly. So, I hired a man named Mr. Sterling to be the face of Chimera Holdings. British accent. Perfect suit. The kind of voice my parents trusted without question. He invited them to lunch at a private club downtown. Neutral ground. Old money. Expensive silence. I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. I sat in my car a block away, listening through the audio feed. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, Sterling began smoothly. Chimera Holdings specializes in distressed assets with high potential. Silverware clinked. We see the value in your property, he continued. And frankly, we see the value in you. I heard my father clear his throat. That pompous sound he made when he felt important. Well, Dennis said, we have put significant equity into the estate. Precisely, Sterling replied. Which is why we're offering a sale-leaseback agreement. He explained it gently, comfortingly. Chimera would purchase the house and absorb the business debt. No foreclosure. No embarrassment. They'd stay in the house as tenants. Low monthly fee. And then came a hook. As a signing bonus, Sterling added casually, we'll issue a corporate credit card. $50,000 limit. For operational liquidity. Silence. Then my mother's voice, breathless. 50,000? And we stay in the house? Of course, Sterling said. It's a standard retention package for our VIP clients. He slid the contract across the table. 50 pages. Buried deep inside, page 42, was clause 42B. Any late payment. Any violation. Immediate eviction. No grace period. No court. A legal guillotine. A rational person would read every word. A scared person would ask questions. But my parents weren't rational. And they weren't scared. They were narcissists. There's a special blindness that comes with believing the universe owes you favors. They didn't see a predatory contract. They saw proof they were special. "Where do we sign?" my father asked. I heard the pen scratch paper. A lock clicking shut. "Welcome to the Chimera family," Sterling said warmly. They laughed. Ordered more wine. Celebrated. I took off my headphones. The signed contract hit my inbox before I even turned the key in the ignition. They thought they'd beaten the system. They didn't realize the VIP package was just the last meal. The clock was ticking. And I was the only one who could hear it. Thanksgiving at my parents' house was never just dinner. It was theater. This year, fueled by Chimera Holdings' credit line, it felt like a coronation. I sat at the far end of the long mahogany table, my heeled leg tucked beneath me, listening. Ashley was holding court, swirling a glass of vintage wine. Paid for by me, showing off a diamond tennis bracelet that caught the chandelier light. "It's just refreshing," she said, smiling wide, "to finally work with partners who understand vision. Chimera isn't like those stuffy banks. They get it." My father nodded solemnly as he carved the turkey. "It takes a certain caliber of person to attract that kind of investment," he said. They saw our potential. Then he looked at me. That familiar pity settled into his eyes. "You should take notes, Jordan," he said. "Your sister knows how to leverage capital. You're still playing small ball." I met his gaze. "Maybe Chimera just likes risky bets," I said calmly. My mother scoffed. "Don't be jealous. At least someone here is securing our legacy." They were eating food I paid for, in a house my company owned, wearing confidence bought with my silence. 3 weeks later, the bill came due. On the night their lease payment was scheduled, I quietly switched the payment gateway to maintenance. Dennis tried to pay. It failed. He didn't call. He didn't document. Because men like him assume rules don't apply. At midnight, the system logged the payment as missed. Clause 42, be activated. Immediate eviction. The next morning, I summoned them for a compliance review. They arrived late. Furious. Demanding to see Mr. Sterling. I turned my chair. "You'll deal with the chairman," I said. Dennis laughed until I showed him the documents. Slide by slide. The debt purchases. The contract. The clause they never read. "You tricked us," my mother whispered. I shook my head. "No," I said. "You tricked yourselves." Security restrained my father when he lunged. "You have 1 hour to vacate," I said calmly. "The locks will change." As they were dragged out, Dennis spat something about hidden offshore accounts. I pulled out one form. "IRS Form 211, I said. "Already filed. 12 weeks earlier." Minutes later, federal agents walked in. Ashley screamed. Dennis went silent. Outside, the air was cold and clean. It didn't smell like money. It smelled like freedom. I called Caleb. "Pack your bags," I said. "I bought the shop. We're starting over." Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who shows up when you're bleeding. And justice? Justice doesn't forget.